want to add one caveat to the conversation you're about to experience with Greg and I, and that is that in the same way you may feel regarding the more than potential demise of the Blues Can is the way you may feel regarding the audio in this podcast. That is, it sucks. There was a hum in the room that I could just not extract. However, I hope that you can take form over fashion in this case and hear through that low hum to what is actually being said. This is not about Greg. It's not about the Blues Can necessarily. It's really about all of us and where we want to see this city go artistically. So, without further ado, I hope you more than enjoy this. I hope this piques a certain amount of interest and your intellect to apprehend what is happening on a grander level around this city. Thank you. So I made good on my promise up here.
As you are.
It stands without saying that there's a good reason to be here. And so what the hell is up with the Blues Can? What's going on?
Well, the Blues Can building has been sold to a developer that has decided that England needs more condos and less art and culture, in a nutshell.
And how do you feel about that? What's your feeling?
Of course, it's rather self-serving, but I think that's a terrible mistake. I don't think England needs any more condos, especially not $400,000 ones. But I don't have the wherewithal to bid against it, nor can I ever. And the city's behind him figures that 20 or 30 more condos are going to solve our housing crisis.
Right. The problems with the housing crisis aren't with the rich, aren't with those who can afford $400,000 condos.
I think the problem goes back a little farther than that when the world started using real estate as a method of making significant sums of money.
The indigenous didn't understand the fucking concept to begin with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we showed up and we were like, you gotta own shit, they're like, what the?
It
Does it mean?
doesn't belong to you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It doesn't even belong to us.
Yeah.
It belongs to something greater than us.
Yeah.
You know?
We're just using it for a very short period of time.
Yeah. And so, you said an interesting thing to me, you know, when we were setting up for this, about the fact that you felt that artists and venues don't need to be taxed. Can you explain that?
Well, it's just a method, and some of this goes back to the early 90s. I traveled in Russia when perestroika was just coming about. I traveled there with my mother and father doing a series of puppet shows and puppet festivals while we were there. And so we were toured around magnificent puppet theaters where I met hundreds of people that were university-trained puppeteers, something that we didn't even have the concept of on our side of the water, and numerous ballets and symphonies. It was just absolutely enriching experience. And every single one of those artists asked us the exact same thing, because they were about to be subject to capitalism, and they couldn't get their head around. But what about the arts? The arts don't generate enough income to carry their own weight. So
They don't fit into that capitalistic model, right?
no, they don't. They were very and specifically because we were puppet orientated. The only example that I could come up with was Jim Henson's Muppets. They're the only economically successful. And I know they weren't the only one, but they were the pinnacle of puppetry capitalism, I guess, if you want to call it that, at the time. A number of other puppet theaters existed in the U.S., but they were much smaller than the ones that we were seeing in the Soviet Union. So, I was not involved in the arts for a long time after that, and so it didn't really impact me or didn't dwell on my soul as much as it does now. That I just spent 13, almost 14 years doing 11 shows a week, hiring hundreds of musicians a week, and watching them struggle and being in awe of their skill sets and their contribution. I remember my mother visiting us here once and saying, "Greg, you don't sell liquor, you don't sell food." She goes, "Look at these people, you sell fun." She goes, "I've never seen so many broad smiles in one place at one time." Right? So, and that's not me. I'm just the venue. Right? That's the. And I don't consider myself an artist,
Right.
but I do consider myself part of the arts community.
Yeah. I think it's more than you create an atmosphere of fun. You create an atmosphere of belonging. And this is one of the things that I've observed, and I continue to observe. I mean, if we look at it, the Grand Theater downtown is suffering the exact same fate now, and I mean exactly the fact that they are wanting to knock that building down and put condos up. It's the exact same reason as you are suffering the potential fate that you're suffering now. And I guess I asked the question, when I was sitting, editing, and thinking about these things, what is the tip of the spear for Calgarians and for artists? When is enough enough?
I had a post on the front of our very front page of our website for a year and a half, explaining to the public that our building was for sale, that it was at risk of being purchased by a developer that will invariably tear it down, that we were unable to afford the property ourselves, or we can't bid against these people. And asking the public for help, saying, if this means anything to anybody, we need to band together. And it wasn't until after, not a single person responded. The second they put up the sign out front that said, "This is a development permit site that is going to be a set of condos," I was being interviewed left, right, and center, 5 TV interviews, 3 radio interviews, a couple of print interviews. Everybody wanted to know all about it, and they were always so sad. I felt like the old Henny Penny story where all the creatures wanted to eat the bread, but nobody wanted to help harvest the grain or knead the dough.
Right.
But the second it was out of the oven, they were lining up. So it's kind of the same thing, but in reverse.
Right. I think that help a lot of times comes in the form first of acknowledgement, and then it comes in the form of discourse. Nobody's going to ask for their money to save a place if it is not within their means, and I don't think that anyone should. But what people should do, and what people have the agency to do, and the right to do, given to them by their government, is the ability to speak up, to have their voice heard, and to say, we're not going to take it. Just like Dee Snider did in 1980. We're not going to take this. Enough is enough. Like I said, what is the tip of the spear for a lazy proletariat that just continues to allow this shit to take place? And now you've got the Grand. I mean, the Grand had, somebody told me the Grand housed the Marx Brothers in 1920. Now, I don't know if the Marx Brothers were around in 1920, and maybe he got the name wrong. But that place has been established since 1920. That has to mean something. You know what I mean? I mean, gentrification is fine, but at the expense of everything?
We lost the Shamrock that was established in like 1850 or 1870 or something like that. The and was a completely viable building, but bought by the city, razed to the ground, all in the name of progress. But Calgary specifically is terrible about maintaining any form of historical anything. They just mow it down, and there's no need for anything old. And it's the lack of old things that has created our housing crisis. It's created the hollowing out of every downtown. Look at what's happening in downtown Vancouver. Right? The only people that can live there own $1 million condos, and there's nothing else. Right? All the vacants are gone. All of them are gone. Right? There's nothing left. Downtown Toronto is suffering the same thing. Condos. Find a small old building, tear it down, and build condos. And because the developers need to make money, so they build luxury condos, or certainly nothing that's remotely. You can't build new something to replace something that was built in the 20s or earlier, and that is dilapidated, and people look at it as having no value. But that's exactly the pattern of gentrification, right? The gentrification pattern is that the artists, the musicians, are notoriously poor. So they live
perpetually.
Yes, and they live together in groups usually because it's more economical, and they live in the cheapest part of any town where they live. Guaranteed. The least expensive warehouses, old buildings that aren't even habitable in some cases. That's where you'll find them. And then they make do with what they have, and slowly but surely, maybe a coffee shop will pop up so that they can drink some coffee, and maybe a little venue will pop up so the musicians have a place to play for the public, and slowly but surely, maybe a record store, maybe even an art gallery so that people have a place to hang their work. And slowly but surely, that dilapidated area that nobody cared about 10 to 20 years ago, so it suddenly becomes a cool place to hang out.
Right.
There's interesting people, there's interesting things going on, music, sounds, smells, sights.
Right. Greenwich Village comes to mind.
Yeah, the Haight-Ashbury.
I was thinking Haight-Ashbury.
It's happened over and over again. I swear to God, the Egyptians did. So but what happens then is the developers step in. They catch wind of this cool area, and it's cheap.
Right.
So they buy up blocks of these old buildings and houses, and they tear them down, and they build whatever fancy new stuff they can sell to the people that didn't contribute to the coolness of the area, but are more than willing to step up and drink from that cup. And that's fine. You need them too. There's nothing saying that those cool areas should remain just in the hands of the musicians. But
can I break that down a little bit though? Because you're really saying some interesting shit.
Yeah.
I want to break that down a little bit. So, what you're saying, and I think this is a scenario worth uncovering a little bit, right? So, there's nothing in an area, right? And of course the musicians are there because they can't afford anything else, which is a separate question as to why we continue to put up with so fucking little, why we are so intellectually lazy as a part of society that we don't say, and we don't realize our power either. We don't realize the power that we really possess, right? And the stratification that's happened. You know what I mean? The whole part of the threads of society itself is at such a high fucking frequency right now that we don't even feel like we can connect. You know what I mean? There's something wrong. There's a collective psychosis, if you will, in society, I think, right now, that everyone is suffering. And for that reason, we're not collectivized. You're saying, okay, so they come into a cheap area, nothing there, right? But then all of a sudden they start to make the area feel like something, right? It starts to get some traction, some traffic. People are coming in and going out, right? And it's a beehive of activity. Well, a little shop wants to service that area, which I think is a good part of commerce. And so they move in, right? But then you see, if I just fast forward, the thing that you're talking about is the taking advantage of that situation by the moneyed that have not had any stake in the growth of that place to make that place what it is. And then ultimately we suffer the indignation of being thrust out of that area and have to go somewhere else and start again. And the other thing I feel is that there's a difference between culture and entertainment. And what we are creating now is mostly entertainment. And entertainment rises very quickly, it's consumed even quicker, and then it's thrown away and give me more. Where's the new thing? Whereas culture is something that everyone has, everyone possesses, everyone puts into, and lasts into antiquity. Right? It lasts forever. And I think that the archetype of this place, and maybe that's what hit me, right, is the fact that you, through your blood, sweat, and tears, created a place, right, where the people, right, the demos could come in and take advantage and be known.
That's exactly what the pattern of gentrification. The Kiss of Death to Englewood was an old Maclean's magazine article on the coolest neighborhood in the country, and that was Englewood. And that started the ball rolling, and this is just, and we're not even at the end, this is just the end of us, at least here. And it will, I've lived in this community for 44 years, and I know my time is coming up. I don't know where I'll go or how I'll get there, but this is not the place. And why did I move into this neighborhood? Because it was cheap.
Right.
It was the only place I could afford.
And yet, I don't think we're looking at the Blues Can as just the name Blues Can, nor just Greg, the guy that owns it. There's something about this place, and about a lot of places, that not through trying or striving or painting the walls, end up with a place that really means something intrinsically to the heart of every man and every woman that steps through the doors. And anything else you call yourself, let's just say that. Let's get that out. Because once again, I think we're deflected these days. What are the things that matter? What matters to the musician? Well, a place like this matters, you know? Because the day that this goes, and shall there not be another to replace it, the hundreds of musicians that come through here on a monthly basis with nothing in the wallet that they already have are not even going to get what they get from this place. And yet somehow, it seems to me like we're just going to allow that to happen.
Stopping progress is impossible. Like we said earlier, everything from Greenwich Village to, I swear to God, pyramids of Giza were once a really cool spot before the Pharaoh rolled in or whatever. And this has been going on so long. This is just the way things go. But we're subject to it in Alberta more so than other places because we're very young, if not the youngest part of Canada proper, and have always strived to, I call it a bit of a Me Too city. Yes, sure, New York's got this, London's got that, Paris has got that, but we're Calgary, we're just as good as all those places. There was an opera house here that burnt down in the 1880s on the site of where the King Eddie is now. And I can't help but wonder when there were dirt streets and clapboard sidewalks. I mean, and it was a 4-day train ride out from the east. I mean, how many opera stars really came out here to play? How many shows did they go on that were in any way meaningful? And that's just typical, oh no, we've got that too. We're just as good as them. Right? And so they're forever tearing down what little is here to emulate someplace else. Their identity is steeped in others' success in other places that
In imitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the greatest form of flattery, but it's also a very cheap way to get what you know what I mean? To say that you actually built something.
Yeah,
You
built something just like something else.
Right, but that's why this place is so important, man. Because it wasn't built on that premise. It was every person who walked into this place owns a bit of this in terms of their contribution to whether it's the smell of the place, or the look of the place, or the friendliness of the place, or the great music. It was, once again, it was the people that established this, along with your benevolence to do what you did to begin with.
Well, this is a blues bar, and blues is a very blue-collar kind of music. If you look at, you won't find cheaper quality food than we serve. You won't find cheaper beer. We pride ourselves in our happy hour. We refer to it as the happiest hour because everything is rock bottom. And as low as we can possibly make it, we've never made money ever. And I've often said to people, why would you not? And I go, because I can't. I don't pay my musicians enough as it is. I want to pay them more. And I want musicians that command more, that are higher quality, that have tighter schedules and bigger tours and are unique to their own, that are unique to the city. Like we've been post-COVID, we've been surviving on local musicians. We used to bring them in from all over the world. Tons from the States, as far away as Australia, Israel, Spain. Right? And anyway, that died sadly COVID. Now we survive on most local musicians, and I'm honored to have so many high quality musicians in this town. It's a bit of an anomaly. I think maybe only sort of Winnipeg has more better musicians than we do.
Right.
And some of that is that there's how many places are left to play in Vancouver.
Do you think, let me ask you this, because a prophet has honor saving his hometown. And I find that the same thing about the musician. And I think there's something wrong with that.
There's a lot wrong with it. I have another saying that is choosing a vocation that is so beloved that people will do for free puts you in a bad spot right out of the gate. Cooking, fashion, music, art, right? These are things
Acting, all of those.
Yeah, all of those things. The people do it for the love of it, and will do it for nothing if given a chance. They are doing it for nothing everywhere. They do it for their own enjoyment, to feed their own families, to make their own clothes, to whatever it is. They are already doing it for nothing. So trying to turn that into a vocation is a tough road to hoe.
Well, and in that respect, I think that's why people call the arts a blessing and a curse. Now, John Riley, the head of the drum department at Manhattan School of Music, said one of the greatest things. He said, the gift, when people talk about the gift of music, or the gift of art, or the gift is only being able to sit for as long as it takes for the sheer pleasure that task brings. Right? That's why a drummer can get good, because it's a blessing. It's just the sheer moment of learning something new, and it's something I think that is intrinsic. It is not taught. I think you are born with a certain proclivity to whether or not you have the desire to sit around and do this specific task. The curse of that is that you're right. Because you'll do it for nothing, then there is a class of individual that recognizes that and then wants you to continue doing something for nothing. Again, what is the tip of the spear, right? I mean, there's a place right down the street, it's monolithic and NMC. And I ask myself, why? What does it represent? What is it? It's a nice symbol. It's architecturally decent. But what is it doing? It doesn't seem to want to define itself. It doesn't seem to want to participate in the grassroots level and continue to really take the money that it gets.
Well, they don't need to.
Why?
They get fed millions of dollars every year. There's a class of, I don't know if you call them venues or producers, promoters, that work the socialist side of the coin. If you can operate as a nonprofit, which essentially means tolerate running your business by committee, then you can qualify for millions and millions and millions of dollars. The politicians fall all over each other, giving them money.
For the sake of what? Status, or for the sake of anything good?
I don't know why they do what they do. And I don't know why they insist that it be a not-for-profit. I mean, if you look at the nuts and bolts of the whole thing, right? The director of the NMC pays himself every year more money than I have taken from this business in 13 years of operation. And yet they do how many shows? They do fewer shows in a year than I do in a month, probably a week.
And yet the Lamborghini seems to still be suffering, or at least that's what I hear. You know what I mean? They can't afford gas money somehow.
I don't know. I don't know how that model works.
Yeah.
I just know that we do what we do with an awful lot less to do.
Yeah, I guess I bring this up, not to just simply, bitch and complain, although I think there is a place for that, and I'm unapologetic about that. But it seems to me that these entities that are getting government money, whether it's, I believe the union does, I know CADA does, Calgary Arts Development Association, I know NMC does, and other places of that ilk. And yet it all seems fractured. It does not seem for the common man. It seems like this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which those three words in regard to the models that have established them are anything but diverse, equitable, or inclusive, right?
Yes.
Yet to take the money of the government, that the government gives to them because I suppose they're a nonprofit and set up that way, and then use that money not for the greatest good, but for a certain smaller demographic of individual that they feel needs to be propped up. And I've seen the change in individuals that have gotten into these organizations over just a span of 2 years, to where they become genuine and caring individuals to some form of elitism and want to consider themselves separate from the overall demos.
It's not working, but so many things aren't. It's way bigger problems than my little club not like being bought and sold and closed down by people that have a completely different idea of what should be happening.
What do you think the bigger problem is?
One of them, when it comes to my world, is not admitting or understanding the value of art and culture, and expecting art and culture to compete with used car sales or magazine subscriptions or God knows what that is more quantifiable maybe than the nebulousness of art and culture. I mean, is trying to define what we do here, or try to compare what we do here with what NMC does, or any one of the other opposite ends of the scale. I think society should or maybe could change their attitude towards the value they get from art and culture. And if they accepted it more and quit trying to capitalize on it less, then the overall health of our society would improve. What does that look like? Maybe we accept that the artists and their infrastructure, because I'm not an artist, but I am the infrastructure that supports them, maybe we change the tax structure so that we don't compete with the gas station and the bodega. Instead, we're treated differently in that once qualified as a genuine artist. So this is going to be rife with abuse, because anytime you can give an advantage to one group, there'll be people claiming, like all the people that are not Indigenous right now, claiming Indigenous status for all kinds of advantage. It's a horrible sin, but whenever there's a situation like that, there will be people trying to capitalize on it.
So you need a system that is somewhat self-aware.
Yes.
Right. And not rapacious and not,
Yes.
not just in it themselves.
Now, even within the art world, there are tons of examples of talentless people that like to think of themselves as an artist, when in actuality they don't have an artistic bone in their body. Right? They just do crazy things and call it art, right? And call themselves an artist, and you're going to still have that too. So disregarding that, albeit large, problem with this little plan, I know literally thousands of people that are absolute genuine artists. They think differently. They have different expectations of their own lives. They don't want the same things that the typical capitalist wants. How do we support that? It's glib, but I would love to see them untaxed.
Right.
Right down to income tax.
I don't think that's glib. I think that's something a government should take a look at, right?
Yeah, we're not a large percentage of society, and we contribute we punch way above our weight as far as value and
To the tune of $2 billion a year.
and health and mental health. We contribute to all of those areas, right? So why not protect us? Why not compensate us in a small way for the sacrifices that we make for the greater good? And that could easily be a lack of taxes, a lack of expectation of that kind of monetary contribution.
Right.
Right?
Do you mean of production? Like what a person produces?
Yes. There's been patrons and artists since they were drawing on cave walls.
Yes.
Right? I will give you this rabbit if you will draw one for me in my cave.
Yeah.
I'm sure happened.
Yeah.
And it's been going on all that time, but we've lost them. Now it's supposedly the even playing field where we all have to contribute in the same way and operate in the same manner. But artists do not.
They produce on their own terms and in their own time, don't they?
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's why I think that expectation you were talking about has to be lessened, because the artist, the true artist, needs time to create, and it needs experience to create, right? Like, I mean, that's where
and the
a lot of your
freedom to create.
sad, broke up with my girlfriend songs come from, right?
Yeah.
And other silly love songs. Because you have to go through that experience. That's what the artist speaks to, is the life experience. Right?
The arts distill life, right? And because if it doesn't, you won't relate to it. Visual arts, even graphic arts, logos and the color of things, and what color the awning is inside your bodega or whatever, right? The interior design, all of these things. But to be successful, those of us who do not have that skill still will relate to it.
Right, because it's part of the human species and part of the human experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we need that desperately. And by that I just don't mean sort of intrinsically. We genuinely need that.
And that's what's being gentrified, I think, in a sense, out of us. To put up $400,000 condos in the place of the true human experience is a problem.
Yes,
right?
And where would all of those developers be before Greenwich Village and Haight-Ashbury and Inglewood and all the other places that have been destroyed? Vancouver used to have all kinds of vibrant scenes, like 100-odd years ago. Right? All of them are gone, right? But and they were all developed out of existence, right? Now, where would the developers be without the artists?
Without the people that created it to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They capitalized on what became cool that was not their due.
And destroyed what was cool.
Yes.
Yeah. And we allowed it.
Yes.
Right. And so do you think,
because we hold money to a higher degree than art and culture. Right? That artist is poor. But the guy driving the Mercedes is wealthy and gets all the attention and is considered a success.
Right.
Despite the fact that in his foyer is the art of the guy that's living in the backseat of his car.
Right. Because commodification is the greatest or the greater form of worship than the actual artistic experience itself, which to me is the other way around.
Yes, that is where we've got wrong. If you want to know what society can do differently or improve or stop the carnage of losing everything, that's what needs to shift. And can you shift it with taxes? Probably not alone. And if you want to know where the sharp point of your spear is, it's when we have none.
Absolutely.
When what was it? Emerson Lake and Palmer song, the museum with the single blade of grass, right? Take a good look.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it used to be like.
Right.
People go, wow, what was life like when art was abundant?
Exactly. It's kind of like 2112.
Yeah.
Rush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the guy finds the guitar and it's been buried for 200 years.
Yeah.
And he picks it up and learns how to play it. And I've often said, to different people that, and to me, NMC, in a sense, is where the bass goes to die, not to live.
Yeah.
Mommy, what's that in that glass case? Oh dear, they used to call that a bass guitar.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not hyperbole.
No,
we've seen it happen.
That's actually happening right now.
Right
down the street.
Right, we've seen it.
Yeah.
And so I harp on these things because they do have the wherewithal and the means to at least be part of a collectivist conversation, part of the dialogue that makes this city so great. Because you know what? The city is fucking great. And it has great players. It has great, masterful musicians and painters and everything else you could ever desire within this. And once again, I think when we're talking about defining certain things, I think the artist is a special type of individual. I mean, from a personality trait sense, right? And so they are more prone, more apt to be more sensitive, and maybe suffer some depressive, psychosis, which is understandable. I mean, a lot of us have, and a lot of the great, the Hendrixes and everybody else suffered greatly from these kinds of things. And within that, you lose a sense of what your individual power is. And I think in a sense, that's what we're talking about here, is the musician and the artist just don't realize the true power they possess to make a fucking change.
Can you imagine if a group of artists were to take over, whether it be a municipal government and do it at a city scale, a provincial government, right, and do it on a provincial scale, and heaven forbid, federal government, where all of a sudden the whole entire country becomes known around the globe as honoring and nurturing the arts, at a level that hasn't been seen in 1,000 years.
Well, that's why, see, because, Plato said that one of the greatest things to have in politics is a disinterested individual, a person that doesn't want to be there, right? And this is what Plato's Republic was all about. This is how the philosopher would be king. Because the philosopher would rather philosophize, he gave little weight to doing the work of government so that he could just quickly get back to under the tree and write a fucking poem, right? Or think. And that is, I think, mankind's, womankind's, humankind's, one of our greatest powers is not to work our fucking ass off. It's to take the time to think, right? And this is what the musician does. This is how the musician creates. He allows experience to come to him.
But that's also what is supposed to happen with money. Money is supposed to afford that for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. Money begets more money. All of a sudden you are competing, using money to keep score between you and your neighbor. Right? Who's got more money? Right?
If it's not regulated, right?
Yeah.
Right. And this is what we have now. We have so much, we have all holistic deregulation of everything, so that money has become that altar in which we sacrifice everything else.
And it has no value. You can't eat it. You can't look at it. You can't enjoy it.
It's a story. It's not really even real. It's just something we agreed on or agreed to. But it's just a story we told
It
ourselves.
could be stones. We printed on paper, plastic nowadays.
Right.
Whatever we choose to make it, it is.
Right. And now we want a CBDC, so we don't even have the physical nature of that. And it can be manipulated in any fucking way. And we, once again, just go, duh, I guess that's the right thing to do. No, man.
There used to be the concept of sing for yourself. Right?
Right.
And they were welcomed into the ends. Right?
Right.
Tell me a joke, sing me a song, tell me a story, entertain me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Make me feel something so that tomorrow when I'm in the field I can muse on it.
Yeah. Right. I can
And
tell.
it'll make my labors easier.
Right. Less laborious.
Yes.
Yeah. And isn't that the truth? I mean, we are working our fucking asses off to the tune that, some ridiculous articles are saying why it's a good thing to have 4 jobs. And they actually think they can make a case for that. And there is no case to be had. Having 4 jobs and working for somebody else that doesn't have to fucking work because you're working 4 jobs doesn't seem equitable to me.
I actually, you may not want to use this, but I actually heard a story a couple of weeks ago about a Ukrainian refugee family that arrived here. And the person that was telling the story had worked with them, and they were great people. They had a husband and wife and a couple of kids, and they come over because they're following their land and sand. And he couldn't understand why we would be such slaves to our jobs. He was working 2 jobs, his wife was working 1. He said, I haven't seen my wife in 6 weeks. I haven't seen my kids in 3. We were going home. We didn't have much. We had a farm. And
We may die, and yet it's still fucking
better than this.
I've heard stories like that. And, I mean, that's, you gotta sit and dwell on that for a second. What does that really mean?
I would rather dodge bombs and watch tanks roll across my fields than work every waking minute, every waking day, to the exclusion of the few things and people that bring me joy.
Right, the things that really matter.
I would rather risk life and limb.
And we think we fucking got it made here. But there is a tide, I mean, the tide is turning, I think. People are starting to understand it. They're still fucking lazy. I will give us that. We still don't want a dialogue. I mean, I think that the artist I think we need to write like a fucking constitution of what we demand from our government. That is why government is there.
The art manifesto.
Whatever you want to call it, man. I think that, once again, we need to collectivize. We need to come together in dialogue and have conversation. I mean, there's nothing in this conversation, maybe some people watching it might be offended. There's nothing that you've said that has offended me. I hope there's nothing that I've said that has offended you. And all we've done in this time is think. We've taken time to sit and breathe, right? And think. Okay, this is where we're at. Where do we want to go? That's why government fucking exists.
It may be horrible outside. What can we do to make it better? What would, even just philosophically, what could make it better? What would make it better? What would I like to fantasize about that would make it seem like a nicer place to be?
And I personally believe that my brothers and sisters out there are far more fucking intelligent than they ever give themselves credit for. And yet, maybe there is this trepidation of speaking truth. Maybe when you do that, you feel like you're going to offend and you're going to lose face. Well, that doesn't...
Lose face, lose your job, lose your house, lose your family.
Sure. But like you said, that comes to the tip of the spear where it just doesn't fucking matter anymore. And, we've talked about other things too. I know maybe, some people out there understand, what Oscar's going through these days. And the fact that I just read his write-up yesterday. And once again, just like you, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So for a week, you were everybody's news. I don't see anybody here right now except you and I talking. You know what I mean? I mean, you're a cycle. And in a sense, so is Oscar. I mean, he's got one write-up, and all that means is that he, you know what I mean? Some people get something different to read for the day. That's not going to solve his fucking problem.
Yeah, a year from now, they'll say, what happened to Oscar?
Yeah, is he? Is Oscar still around when it?
Yeah, he froze to death in the backseat of his car.
Right. Oh, fuck that. Oh my God, that hurts. Anyway, what's for lunch? You know what I mean? I mean, that's a sick fucking attitude. That is a society with a sickness. And I think, I don't know, I mean, these are the things that you and I are talking about. And I feel like we need to talk more. I think the Demos needs to, like I said, set up some kind of constitution. Something that we want. Do we want anything? Or are we just fucking happy dying? Because a lot of us are. I know too many musicians in this town that are worth far more than they're getting. Now, do I think they should make billions? No. I don't think anybody should make over $100 million in their lifetime. There is, I think, a basic income that should be allotted to every human being. Because, I believe that you have the right to exist. It's a funny thing that, like, people try to put down abortion rights, but those people, as soon as you're born, couldn't give a fuck about you. You know what I mean? So, I mean, nothing is of lesser importance than the other one. As a matter of fact, now that you're born, you need to be fucking sustainable, right? And I think that everyone should be allotted the right, by nature, to be able to exist and to be able to have their basic needs taken care of. Now, if you're going to work out some meritocracy over top of that, that's fine too. There are people that do a better job than others. Some people care about things in certain areas or aspects. That's fine, but it should never become so much. And there has to be a dollar amount. There has to be a mathematical equation where too much money ends up destroying the cycle of life, I suppose, in a sense, that feeds every woman and man and child. And I don't think that equation nets itself out in the metric of capitalism. I just don't.
Capitalism in its purest form is awful. Democracy, even in its purest form, is awful. You just vote the money away from the people that have it to the people that want it. The capitalism on its most extreme level doesn't work either. Everything's got to be a balancing act. I'm a staunch conservative. I believe in minimal government. I believe in fiscal responsibility. But I also think that education, transportation, energy, healthcare should all be socialized. That should give more than enough work for all the bureaucrats and people that want government jobs to keep them busy, right? But we have somehow stratified it in a way that now, to be conservative, you're a racist, homophobe that, you know.
Oh, I know.
And you can't start talking about fiscal conservatism or minimal government or anything like that without being labeled. And conversely, on the other side of the scale, the socialists as well, right? Everybody's so busy defending their camp or their flag or their whatever you call it,
right? But they're perpetuating the problem.
Yeah.
Instead of coming together
and saying, well, this works. This part of what you do works really well, and this part of what I do works really well.
Fuck, let's get together.
Let's go. Call me crazy.
Let's get it out.
Yeah.
I mean, well, here's the thing: is what you're discussing and what you're defining here is a fluidity in the political, and I think that that's something that we don't understand. I mean, we think we're so fucking smart these days, but politics is fluid. So, you set up a scenario, right? You have $5 in your bank account. Would you tend to be more liberal with your money or more conservative with your money? Now, I've had people say, well, Gavin, that's not no, it is equitable in this sense. And that is that if you have an issue that demands a certain reaction, right? Whether that's a liberal action or a conservative one, you are going to do, with all common sense, the one that meets the greatest good. In this sense, the political is no different. If you can afford to spend, spend. And if you can't, save. It's the same thing, and government works that way. However, with government, because they seem to have no bottom, to the coffers or the hands that they put out, from special interests and every fucking other thing, that they never have to worry about that equation. They never have to worry about whether they should be conservative, right? And therefore, we pit each other against each other. And we fight amongst ourselves. It's just a complete bullshit.
It is a great saying, Indian saying from East India. It says, if you have only 2 rupees, use one to buy a loaf of bread to feed the poor, and with the other buy a white hyacinth to feed your soul.
Right.
We need it.
Right. We just tried to steal 2 more rupees. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You only have 2. I have 4.
Yeah, that's right.
Who doesn't have any then?
Yeah, right. And these things are thought experiments as well. Something that I think the artists themselves could be very good at, and they never challenge themselves with. A thought experiment. Like, something is this way. These are your parameters. Let's work it out. I think that the artist is a great thinker and goes far deeper than just the average individual. Although to say that is to maybe take away from humanity itself, because I believe that everyone can create, and everything is art in a sense, right? Even politics is an art. It's just a performance art. That's all it is, right? It's just a performance.
We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and what is important to each individual is unique to that individual. Some people like to stack bricks. Some people like to read books. Some people like to hypothesize about, pontificate about things that cannot and will not ever exist. Other people want something more concrete. Some people like to fish. Some people like to fly.
There's no time for that. We gotta fucking work 3 to 4 jobs.
Yeah.
There's no time for that shit that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right, those real intrinsic parts of our human nature, the things that make us who we are, and give ourselves, the experience of one another. Like fishing with a buddy. You know what I mean? You go out, you have a couple of beer, you fucking throw your line, you know what I mean? You just talk shit all day. And there's something valuable in that.
And nobody even got a bite.
Right. But
But
what do they say? A bad day?
But it was still a 70% fantastic day.
A bad day's fishing is better than a good day's work.
Did you have a good time? I had a great time. How many fish did you catch? Not one.
Right. But it was a time of my fucking life.
Yeah.
Look, You know, when I played here, I would go inside and I'd read a book or something like that, and people would come out. And everyone around the table, which never would have fucking happened in the 80s, the 70s, and the 90s. And people are talking political shit. I'm talking the waitresses, I'm talking the patrons, and no one's embarrassed. But this is what's on our mind, and that's why I feel like doing this is important to me, because it is in our face.
Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Well, you know, it's not going to be my luck. It's going to be our great fortune that we come together and stop being embarrassed and start having these kinds of conversations. There's no time for embarrassment, you know, and I can set myself up to just be knocked down, and I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? I know how I play the drums. I know I do a good job. And I know why I have conversations with heavy motherfuckers like you. And the reason I do that is because I simply can't not. I care. I don't know why I care. I don't know why I care. But I do know that I do care. And so I want to thank you, you know, for giving me your, you know, unadulterated thoughts and feelings on this shit. But I thank you people for watching this. If you got to the end of it, most people probably wouldn't have looked through the first 30 fucking seconds. But we need to stop being lazy. And I mean that. We need to come up with a fucking constitution of some sort for the artists that makes sense and that is something that can be proposed and with some form of agency from all of us. I'm not gonna, there are no saviors. I'm not gonna save you, Greg's not gonna save you. We are, well, in a sense, you're gonna save me and I'm gonna save you. It's the only fucking way things happen. That hasn't changed. Nobody can download shit into you yet so that you can learn karate in 30 seconds. We have to do the hard work. Is it unfortunate? I don't know. It brings us closer together when we fucking do it that way, I can tell you that. Love everybody. Love everybody out there, and thank you. And thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Gavin.